I could build a spaceship.
Hello and welcome to Space Doc Jury Minisode something. I'm not counting anymore. I'm Lee.
I'm Peter.
And I'm Andy.
And this week we are no longer talking about ready rooms after the...
No, it's okay, Peter. It's okay. Just for you. This is a surprise for you. We're actually going to talk about spaceship kitchens now.
No, we're not talking about spaceship kitchens this week. No.
Are we talking about Neelix then?
Yes. The legend is Neelix.
Neelix the legend.
Neelix.
Possibly the most competent member of the crew of the USS Voyager.
Of Starfleet, I'd say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And also the only known celebrity chef to survive into the 24th century.
Yeah.
He had his own TV show and everything.
Yeah.
Talk show. He did it all.
Shall we draw a veil over this for a later episode? It's all gone quiet on the other end. I think either the Skype's dropped off or he just walked off in a huff.
I'm just trying not to drop the C-bomb, okay?
It's okay. We have an explicit rating.
I haven't had enough beer.
We've corrupted a man of the cloth.
Almost.
It
takes Neelix to do that.
It does. Yeah. All you've got to do, by the way, for Neelix is you've just got to say, well, he dated a 9-year-old.
I thought it was a 4-year-old.
Well, it's even worse. It's not exactly an improvement.
Well, to be fair, it is kind of part of a course for some celebrity that was on like television.
Yes. Okay.
Technically in the 70s as well. So yeah, that would actually.
Really, we are not doing a Neelix special, are we? Can we not move on?
Oh, do we upset someone?
Oh, no,
I'll tell you
stop,
what.
stop.
We'll save it. We'll save it.
Yeah, we'll save it for another time, and whether or not Pete's been good on the Twitter.
Yes.
Or I'm dead, preferably.
Or you're dead. Yeah. Yeah. So let's.
That could be my memorial podcast.
Yeah, as you're sliding down the window of the reactor room, and we're pressed up against it. Yeah. I am and always shall be ignoring Neelix. Anyway, so that neatly leads us on from death to our subject for this week.
Hey, segue.
Ooh, smooth as silk. Which is spaceship deaths. What makes a spaceship death? What makes a good spaceship death? What makes us go no as the ship explodes? And which ones were most notable in your minds?
We could almost call this Man Blub episode, couldn't we?
It could be a Man Blub episode. It could. I doubt any of us have ever sat there and gone, oh, that just blew up. Unless, of course, you're watching Space 1999.
In which case, that's every week.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it's like that's just like throwing.
There goes another one.
Yeah. You actually start crying when you see one land intact. Anyway, so let's work around it. Let's get on with it. Who's got a decent one that we can all chew over for a kickoff? I'm pretty sure that as soon as I said spaceship deaths, I'm pretty sure everyone went to one in particular.
Well, should we address the constitution in the room then?
Well, I think so. I mean, what is it about the destruction of the Enterprise in Search for Spock that is quite so affecting? And is it one of your standout spaceship deaths?
Oh, without a doubt. It's definitely one of the most man-blubby of spaceship deaths, if you will, for lack of a better word. And I think what it is partly, it's not... I mean, the death itself is quite traumatic because it's very well done.
The effects are astounding, aren't they?
Yes, the effects are astounding. And, the whole lead-up and the build-up to that is all very good. I mean, it had taken a kicking in Wrath of Khan, here we are going forward. Yeah. But I think what makes it most, impactful is just... It's the Enterprise. It's the ship which, people had been with for 20 years at that point. I think the original series was 66, was it?
69.
69. Are you sure about that?
No.
I'm pretty sure it's
69 on the brain.
I'm pretty sure it's 66. So, yeah. And Search for Spock, I think, is 84. So 18 years people have been with this ship, sort of thing, have followed it on its voyages, have known this crew and everything like this. And I'm pretty sure up until that point, it was, effectively the Enterprise was a member of the cast.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, we'd had Spock's death, with finger quotes, in Wrath of Khan, which again, very emotional scene, very touching. But given that the title of this film is The Search for Spock, we can go with a certain amount of certainty that they're going to find him. But this time, there was no coming back. This was, it was gone. It's that moment after the big explosion and everything like that, though. It's when they're standing on the planet Genesis looking up as it just streaks across the sky. And it's just, my God, Bones, what have I done?
What you always do, Jim. Turn death into a fighting chance for life. Yes, but we're still stuck on a crumbling planet, you silly old bastard.
Yeah, you didn't really think this one through, did you, Jim?
No.
Huh? You had one job, Jim. One job.
So
there were Klingons in the kitchen, Jim.
So what about you, Pete? I mean, when you saw the Enterprise go up, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Andy, talking about the sort of long history, because there is a bit of a disconnect for me between the original series Enterprise and the one we see in the movies, because, well, blatantly it looks roughly the same, but it's not quite the same ship.
No.
Besides which, I'd never gained that much emotional attachment to the original series. I never really got into it in a big way as I had done with Doctor Who, so it wasn't until Next Generation I really, really got into Star Trek. But having said that, I mean, I say partly it's the effects, and partly it is, and heaven forbid that I should actually compliment William Shatner on his acting, but in some ways, the look on his face is more grief-stricken than it is when he loses his son. He sells the death of the Enterprise slightly better than he does.
Yeah,
he did seem more cut up about it, didn't he?
Yeah. But admittedly, of course, he'd not known his son that long, I guess you could argue, so perhaps there is...
Well, he'd spent longer on the Enterprise than...
He had, yeah.
Plus, if you think about it, I mean, everything up until that point, especially in the motion picture and kind of everything, everything had been... The Enterprise was the most important thing in the world to him.
Yeah.
You had in the whole motion picture him fighting to get it back, and then in Wrath of Khan, he's worried that he's too old for the ship anymore. She's going off with younger people now.
And let's not underplay the fact the score is fantastic as well. So that really tugs at your heart.
Some of James Horner's, and again, it's just Christopher Lloyd. Again, you've got the sound of a computer as the Klingons are going around the bridge. The fiendish Klingons are on the ship, and then it's just when he realizes what's going on, it's like, get out of there, get out.
Yeah. I must admit, I saw that at the cinema, and I'd been sort of indoctrinated into the way that Trek worked, if you know what I mean. Trek was always a formula, and it was one that really got cemented in Next Generation, but it was always the same. It was always problem, obvious solution, and then finally a countdown, usually a countdown of 5 to 10 minutes. Which
it always stopped at 1.
Yeah. And so I remember distinctly sitting in the cinema, and they set on to self-destruct, and it's counting down. And I thought, any minute now, he's going to take care of those Klingons, and he's going to stop the self-destruct. He's going to do it. Yeah, he's going to do it any second now. Any second. Any 3, 2, 1. Oh, shit. and I have to say, it really did. I remember being properly dumbstruck by it when I first saw it, because I was not expecting that at all. I was along with the story, and I was always of the opinion that was kind of like your one constant, the Enterprise. Yeah. And so, when it went up, when it started to dissolve, and they make that whole point of watching the actual number, the registry just burn off, and it's like, oh no, this could not be more permanent.
And that bit when the saucer section explodes.
Big glass dome. Yeah, they blew up. Yeah, it's you just
what Amory calls properly dead.
Yeah. There was
sometimes, because with Trek quite often shown at tea time, people are supposed to be dead, but they don't look very dead. There's not much in the way of blood or gore or anything. Yeah. Just occasionally they'll splash out on somebody that's probably usually a Klingon for some reason. It's more acceptable for them to look dead. But that Enterprise properly dead.
Yeah, and they made a real point of the fact that it's not just slightly dead; it's properly dead, because they blew the front of it off. Then they detonated it, and then they burnt it up in the atmosphere.
Well, you see how ruined the hull is at that point as well, because even after dealing with Khan, it was still that pristine, pearlescent white, and it's very bright and vivid, and a very clean-looking ship. and all of a sudden it's all scorched to hell, and it's all this dirty score marks all over the hull, and these jagged like spurs sticking out where the saucer used to be, and it's. I mean, it is effectively looking like someone's been dismembered. Yeah, and it's quite kind of, for those of us who are, very fond of our spaceships, it's quite distressing to see it like that.
Yeah, definitely. So, let's move away from that for a minute.
Yes.
I mean, is there? Let's try and balance this. Is there a spaceship death where you just sat there and went, "Oh, fuck off"? Seriously, why?
Well, I said there's one that is "oh, fuck off," mostly because so with the original Enterprise, it was a how can I say this? It was a noble death. It died saving the crew. It died, in a noble fashion and everything like this. It was the last hurrah. She was going to go to the scrapyard otherwise. So she one last hurrah, died nobly. That was fine. Skip forward 70 odd years to Star Trek Generations and the death of the Enterprise D, which for me, with the original one, its death, it served the plot, it carried the story forward, it had meaning. The D was just some twat thought, we should probably blow up the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And that was literally it. Nothing about the death of the Enterprise D makes sense. There's no reason why that Klingon bird of prey should be able to destroy it. Once it does get destroyed, the effect is pretty pathetic. I mean, you get a source of separation, and then the secondary hull just explodes, sending the saucer into the planet, and it does the whole sort of like careening into the crashing thing, and that's kind of it. And a ship which, certainly for me, I'd grown up with. I'd spent 7-8 years at that point with the Enterprise D. It was my Enterprise. I think it's the same with you to a certain extent, Peter, but it was our Enterprise. And it's dead, and it's a senseless death. It's like it carries no weight. There was no meaning to it. It was one of those, it was just done for shock value. It just had no meaning, no impetus. So when that happened, I was just, for fuck's sakes. The fuck? Why? Why would you do this?
Yeah. Did you feel the same, Pete, or were you?
No, I'm completely opposite. It does that one still. I mean, it's not, the effect isn't as good, so I'll grant you that. It also, interestingly, doesn't have quite such a wallop, because they're playing with time travel in that film, and there was always this sneaky suspicion that somehow everything was going to get rewound. I mean, thankfully they didn't do that. They do still kill the ship, because that would have been even cheaper.
Yeah,
and they do make a horrible mess of the bridge. That's the thing that really hits you, is once they've crashed and the lights come up a bit. And you see the state the bridge is in, and that nice, comfortable, carpeted area you're used to, your front lounge has been absolutely trashed.
Like, is that a party again?
Yeah, yes. Yes. So, and I love the crashing of the saucer. That's just an amazing fact. I mean, when you find out how they did it, which is basically to make huge fuck off massive saucer and literally crash it into the ground, it's like, no wonder it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So no, I have no problems with it at all. I don't feel it's particularly cheap personally, but Mr. P will just have to disagree on that one, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with everything, it's one of those things where it's how invested you are in the film as much as anything. That if you're not willing to go with something like that, then it will feel cheap. I mean, for me, I watched Generations, and I was kind of counting the clock, if you know what I mean. I was watching just like, oh, here we go. I wasn't on board about halfway in, and then I was completely gone by the time we got to, Soren and the Klingons have stolen Geordie again, and they've put stuff in his eyes again, and it's like...
Well, in the past, that was the Romulans, to be fair, but they're not exactly original, are they?
No, and then it was like, oh, there's Brent Spiner actually earning that conservatory again, and so...
And then Worf forgot how to do his job.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be honest with you, I was upset to see it go, because, like with Andy, I'd literally watched this whole series back to front. I was literally buying the videos as they were coming out in our price, and so to get it blown up that way kind of was like, oh God, no. But on the other hand, I didn't have the same impact as the 01.
Yeah, the
refit. Even though effectively it wasn't the ship that I'd grown up with. But
Don't get me wrong. I was sad to see it go. Very, very sad to see it go. I just think I would have preferred its death to have carried more weight and more meaning. Even if it was as simple as a case of we get to know the people of Viridian 4. So we get a sense of why it has to sacrifice itself. The Enterprise D death, to me, was the equivalent of Tasha Yar's death.
Yeah.
It was like, and she's dead. And it's like,
part of the problem, of course,
monster?
is that they're trying to have their cake and eat it and have 2 deaths in that film. Because, of course, it's not just the Enterprise D they're killing, but Kirk.
Bridge on
so
Captain.
it's always going to be somewhat overshadowed by that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, the thing that always got me with that was because when it came out, I was all over the information on that, and I always remember reading someone on a fanzine somewhere had found a leaked script, or they got an original draft of it or something, and they had the original death of Kirk.
Was this on the battle bridge?
Yeah, on the battle bridge, and
which is so much better.
And he's the last person on board the old Enterprise, and he puts himself in between the missile and the sun, which Soren's fired, and his last words are "It was fun," and the whole Enterprise and him on it go boom, and that's it. Oops, sorry, hit my mic.
Appropriate.
There you go.
Yeah.
And to me, that was kind of like great, but obviously. Someone's obviously sat there and gone, well, you can't have the Enterprise blow up again, and you can't kill Kirk on it. And so...
what I'd heard was it was actually the star drive section of the D, the battle bridge.
No. It was...
this is what I... The thing I'd heard was the ship was crippled, and they were trying to, evacuate, get away. He'd heard about the battle bridge. He basically ran down there, separated the ship, and he took that to go and... to do that, basically. Which, again, to me makes a lot more sense because, A, Kirk dies on the bridge, not a bridge.
Yeah.
And again, the Enterprise sacrifices itself to stop this missile. The only reason the Enterprise dies in Generations is because of the gross incompetence of the command crew, which I believe I went into with some detail on your broadcast episode.
Yes.
So I'm not going to retread it, but yeah.
The broadcast 8.M for a long rant.
Yes. Yeah, but the other thing I was going to say was also that in the draft that I read, they basically it did something which I really hated Generations for, which is if you've got the Nexus and you can go anywhere in time, then wouldn't you actually go to well before the event and try and stop it?
That's a massive hole.
And so, but Kirk actually does that, and he steals the old Enterprise out of a museum.
Yeah, they were going to go with that for a while, but they thought it was too expensive or something.
Yeah, so it's him on the old Enterprise stopping the missile. That is totally 100% how it should have gone. Not even the next gen Enterprise, just him. But but for me, my fuck off death of a spaceship, which Mr. Palastes may also wade in on, I'm sure.
I know where this is going.
Is the Battlestar Pegasus? If you
you, Adama.
Yeah,
both of them. Yeah. Both of them. Fuck you both.
Yeah, if you're gonna take a really powerful warship, and the other one is turning basically into Swiss cheese, then you don't get the one that's working, taking the pounding and dishing it out, and then just go, well, thanks very much for that. Everyone in the shuttle, and then just run it straight into a bad guy ship. Why didn't you just why? And then hope that the
Why didn't you bring your fucking Vipers with you?
Yeah.
Twat!
Yeah. So what you get is a really cool ship and a really cool ship death scene, but then what you get is essentially the spaceship equivalent of buyer's remorse and going, hold on, I think we made a terrible, terrible mistake here.
They did effectively cripple the fleet at that point. When the second the Pegasus went, the Galactica was never up to the task, and once you got rid of a Pegasus, any hope you actually had of surviving is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it was completely and utterly wasted. And, I mean, in some ways, it was good that they did, because there was this whole thread of us against them on the Pegasus, which I just was the most boring subplot known to man. But as in terms of just like, you're a commander of a ship, defending a fleet, and you've got one ship which is armed to the back teeth, strong as anything, can take a licking and keep on ticking, and you've got another one which is essentially made out of tissue paper. Which one do you save? Let me think. It's just like, no. And
I've got my spare pair of pants on.
Well, yeah. A little look into Pete's private life there. But anyway, so let's move on to more positive, or at least as positive as we can be with a.
I've got one. I've got one.
Go on, then.
And this will, Pete. You can just switch off for a couple of minutes while me.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going with this.
You know where I'm going.
I know where this is going.
Fucking Normandy.
I'm sitting here in my N7 onesie.
Yeah,
and still
the Normandy. The death of the Normandy at the beginning of Mass Effect 2 is one of those jaw-dropping. The first time it happened, it's just your jaw drops, and you're going,
yeah, yeah. It's the thing is for me. It's still got the power to shock, because the thing is, I'm playing the trilogy at the moment on the PC.
Yeah,
and I literally went straight from 1 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
So one ends with the Normandy and the crew all smiling, and
at the end of what you put 30 hours into the game at the end of Mass Effect 1,
and then some.
Okay, fine. So you do everything.
Yeah, I'm somewhere up in the sort of 75, 80 hour mark. And then it ends with the Normandy flying off into the sunset, big cheery music.
Yep.
I switched straight over to Mass Effect 2, and
which starts off with this gorgeous shot of a Normandy.
Yeah,
jumping into this system, all the wings do its little thing, and you got Presley on the bridge walking around, and the crew are doing their stuff with the holographic interfaces, and it's just like it's never looked better than ever. Yes, Elvis Presley. The king is not dead; he is now a navigation officer.
Well, actually, he's dead in about 10 seconds after that.
Yeah. He
weapons panel goes up in his face.
Yeah.
There's a caption come up. Elvis has left the building.
No. The console explodes in his face.
Yeah. He literally is a hunk of burning love by the end of that sequence. But yeah, it's just
I'm all shook up.
Yeah, ooh, as the air goes straight out the bulkhead. But yeah, it goes past, and you're thinking, I love this. And then all
it looks great in the new engine. It's like,
yeah. They give it, in the new graphics engine, it's all shiny and
they
lovely.
fix the scale.
Yeah, don't bring that up. Let's not go there. There's no way of telling in the game until you play the DLC. So there you go. Moving on. Unless you want me to carry on about Superman versus Batman, and we can do that instead.
Oh no, let's moving on.
Right, okay.
Spaceships in Superman versus Batman?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Normandy, we're on the Normandy. We're talking about it blowing up.
Anyway, yeah, but it's just that moment when you get the laser beam flies past it. It does this kind of jink, but then it gets caught and it spins out of control. And you cut to your character, and he tells someone to go and launch all the life pods, and you think that's a bit serious. And then he opens the door, and you suddenly see that the entire bridge canopy control CNC area has basically been exposed to vacuum. And it's like, oh, this is more serious than I thought.
Yeah.
And the ship is just falling apart around you. And it's like, no. It was just like the Enterprise. You're just sitting there going, don't make this happen.
It's because as well, you're witnessing its death.
Yeah.
You're standing there while this ship slowly dies around you.
Yeah. And then there's Joker in the control booth, in the cockpit going, no, I can still save her. And you're thinking, yay. And then he goes, nope. I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to throw you in the escape pod. And then the laser beams come, and it's all over.
Yes.
It's terrible. Terrible.
It is.
And again, it's the same thing. It's something you've spent X amount of hours with, and you've grown an attachment to. Whether or not you think it's a space prawn or not is up to you. But suddenly it goes... And it's just like it's gone, and it's like,
and that again, it's the way it pulls back, and you get the final one goes through and like literally
cuts it,
severs the ship in half, and it's just like, oh no,
yeah. And that goes back to almost what I was saying about the Enterprise and was it Search for Spock? Part of it is that the spaceship, especially in these kind of films and games and what have you, the spaceship is kind of like your rock, the thing you can always rely on. You know, you can pretty much say that, you know, if a hero's got a spaceship and it's a named spaceship, 99.9% of the time you can guarantee it's going to survive. So it doesn't matter what else happens. You know, something could happen to Han Solo. I'm not saying anything did for those who haven't seen it. but you've always got the Falcon. And, you know, I think if something was to happen to the Falcon, I don't think my little heartsy could take it, to be honest.
No.
They almost did it. Weren't they going to blow it up in Return of the Jedi?
Yeah. They did, and they bottled it, didn't they? They didn't want to kill off Lando Calrissian, so they just knocked the They knocked the saucer off.
To be honest, they probably could have killed Lando. We wouldn't have cared much, but they killed the Falcon.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. You kill the Falcon, mate. There was hell to pay.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I think that's, again, you know, it's one of those constants. You can't let it die, and if it did,
on a similar line, Blake 7, the Liberator, end of the third series, and if we're talking about properly dead. They really kill that poor ship to death. It basically goes through a cloud and gets some sort of horrible rotting thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't rust. This is actual rot. You know, you've got bits of the... I mean, the effects weren't generally very good on Blakeson, but they're really good in that episode.
Yeah.
And it's also added to by the fact that you've got really used to the ship's computer, Zen, who's got a lovely character to him, and he dies. I mean, his voice just, you know, goes.
Yeah.
And the light screen that represents him goes dark, and so, oh my god! I mean, they did think the series was ending then, so they thought they could get away with it. And then, because they did it so well, Beeb phoned up and told them they had to make another series, and they made it with a shonky rip-off of the Falcon. But when the Liberator dies, that's a real gut punch. That one is. Yeah,
absolutely. It is definitely one of those ones where you just, oh man. I mean, I'm not the greatest fan of Blake 7 because it's, you know, for me, I can't get past the shonkiness of the production.
Yeah, you've got it's like original Who as well. You've got to have a certain ability to cope with the lack of budget.
Yes, exactly. But even so, it's still one of those moments where you just sit there and go, no, don't do this. There's no need to do this. You don't really have to destroy this ship, do you? No, come on. And when it went, it was just like, okay, I'm done. And then they replaced it with a Scorpio, which looks like a box of cornflakes with some Greebles stuck to it. I was just like, no, thanks very much. I'm really out. It really put me out, that one. But yeah, what about you, Andy? You got another ship death?
I've got a couple I can talk about. One which, again, I feel kind of like the Enterprise was a cheap death. I mean the D. And it's another Star Trek one, and that's the Defiant. Because most people don't realise that the Defiant actually did get destroyed, and then was promptly back later that episode.
Yeah,
with another Defiant with exactly the same registry number. And I think the only thing that changed was they changed some of the
carpet.
The pinstriping on the carpet, basically. it had like a more of a purple hue, which again I think there was an opportunity there to do a really powerful, emotional episode almost dealing with the loss of again your rock, the ship, and everything like this. But no, it's like it's blown up at the beginning of the episode, come the end of the episode, hey, we got a new ship, hey.
And that was cheap because they were just doing it to show how tough the bad guy is. Oh, really? So
that
clever way of doing it.
It was a bit of a thing. Another one for me is the Discovery 1 in 2010. Not so much for the ship itself, but for Hal. And the way it's treated with at that point, because again, you know, Hal's got issues, shall we say? It's got a few issues, but still, in 2010, you know, we think like he's getting better, and he's got this kind of innocence about him.
Well,
almost,
we have a rationalisation for it. That's the thing, isn't it? We understand why.
We understand why it happened, and we kind of feel a bit sorry for him. It's almost like Hal's. I don't know. He can't. Well, again, we established he can't deal with social niceties and stuff like that and everything like that. So he takes things at face value. So there's an innocence to Hal at this point, and they figured out that they can escape the imminent implosion / becoming of a star of Jupiter. Sorry, Elton, that's about to happen. If they sacrifice the Discovery 1.
Yeah.
But they don't want to tell Hal because they're worried he's going to go all fucking psycho and kill them all, as is his one. So they lie to him. But then at the last minute, they confess to him that, the ship is going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And then it's just the way Hal says to him, I understand. Thank you for telling me, Dr. Chandra.
Yeah.
And then just as he's about to go, he just asks, will I dream?
Yeah.
And Dr. Chandra, who's always said, yes, you will dream because intelligent things always dream, just says, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then he goes off. And that, for me, is a real sort of like, tears in the corner of the eyes. It's just that bit of dialogue. It's that innocence of will I dream that it's just like, oh, God. And then, he mechanically just says full thrust and all that, and then does his thing basically like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of that is the ship or the computer, but since they're one and the same, I kind of count that as a real kind of, aww.
Yeah. Well, that's almost back to one of my next spaceship deaths, which is, you kind of, once you've got an emotional attachment to either it or the people on it, once that happens, the death of the ship, whether it actually is a good death or whether or not it's just something, as part of the story, but it's one of those things where it hits you hard and you can't sort of separate the ship, the people, the story, or anything. So you just go, right, fine, actually, this is all making me very upset. And it's the Valley Forge from Silent Running.
Ah, yes.
Which is very hippie, I'll be honest with you. But there's just that... have you seen it, Pete?
I saw the first 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I can't comment, but I couldn't get beyond that.
Well, that's fair enough, but it's very hippy dippy, and I'm sure that if I watch it again, I'm probably going to feel the same. But essentially,
you're doing it, aren't you, for the Black Dog?
Yeah, at some point, yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens is essentially Huey and Dewey, the two robots, because Louis gets damaged, but Huey and Dewey, the Earth. The Earth Navy or whatever it is, catch up with Bruce Dern, and essentially they want to stop him from keeping the trees alive on board this ship.
Yeah, it's like the last examples of forests are on these ships, and they decided that it's actually cheaper to blow them into space and to go back to hauling freight, which doesn't make a huge amount of sense.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But the thing is that by the end, what happens is. Bruce Dern, who's grown attached to these three robots, he basically decides to put one on one dome full of trees and then one on another dome full of trees, and then basically eject the domes. So the trees go off and they'll live forever, and there's just this shot of the domes lifting away, and poor old Bruce Dern's stuck on this spaceship just as the does he self-destruct it, or the missile comes in from the Navy, doesn't it? To blow him up.
The missile comes in. No, he self-destructs, doesn't he? Because the crew are coming onto the.
That's right. They're going to ball.
So he jettisons the pods out.
Yeah.
And then he self-destructs it, doesn't he?
And the self-destruct itself, the explosion and everything, isn't really that impressive. It is for the time, but not in grand scheme of things. But the final shot is the sort of like the pods flying off into space, and you kind of cut to the robots still watering the plants and wandering about, and the music's all playing, and you got this little flash of hope, but you're sitting there going, oh God, Bruce is dead and the spaceship's gone and trees are forever and and it's kind of we are doing Silent Running actually for Man Blood Month. So it's a weird thing where the spaceship death itself isn't terribly impressive, but again, it's that whole thing of losing the hub. It's like losing a home, and then the people on it, and that's when you kind of that's when it hits you the hardest, because it's like it's become the environment that you become comfortable with and you enjoy and all this sort of thing. So so what about you, Pete? Have you got another one or?
I can't think of another one off the top of my head, I must admit.
Okay, well that's fair enough. I mean, how about we do impressive deaths, ships that go up in a way that just makes you think, bloody hellfire. I mean, where you sort of see
you've already kind of done the best one of that, which is the Pegasus, which not only takes out one base star, it takes out two others.
Well, that's impressive in one way, but but like for example, one that really even now when I watch it, I still see it, and I go, "Fucking hell, that's so well done." Was the Roger Young from Starship Troopers when it gets
a very impressive effect.
It's an impressive effect when it blows up and it basically cuts in half, and you've got like about 10,000 decks through the ship, all on fire, and people falling out of it, and bits getting blasted into space, and you just think, that is really. I mean, when I saw that on the big screen, that was a really impressive effect. It wasn't an affecting death, but it certainly was a
damn impressive visual effect. Because again, each of those decks, because it's a large scale miniature, and what they did is each of those decks, I think, were made out of tinfoil or something like this.
Yeah.
And they manually bent each one for each frame to give it this sense of a thing kind of imploding and crumbling around it. And yeah, it's damn good, the whole invasion of Kendall.
It's curious, isn't it? Because it's for what's on paper quite a cheap and nasty film. You know, it's a Verhoeven film. I mean, the trouble they spent on the effects on that are just, it's amazing, really.
Well, you got the Roger Young model. I think is about 20 feet long, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was certainly in the dying days of the practical model effects, which was fantastic. I've got another one, similar sort of vein, but from a lot earlier. This one, Babylon 5, and I know that the general consensus the effects aren't good, but this one still for me has weight, mostly from a music cue. But it's during the episode Severed Dreams, when you have one of the Omegas is on fire and has to ram another one. And it's just, this is kind of the first time you've really seen proper damage on a spaceship on the TV. I mean, in Star Trek, if it had damage, it was like Wrath of Khan, where it's suddenly black or, there's a bit missing. But this was, you had fires on decks. This thing was obviously going down in a big way. And it just very slowly, because remember, it's a flying brick with a big spinning thing in the middle, just turns and just careens into this other one. And the musical cue they have that happens is just really, really, really impressive. And I think that was the high watermark of the visual effects in Babylon 5 up until that point.
Yeah, I mean, I know the effects haven't dated well. I mean, that's pretty much undeniable. But I do think, again, it's the same deal. It's the emotional impact, that comes with seeing all of this stuff kick off. It's just still, you kind of sit there and go, wow. I mean, feel free to jump in, by the way, Pete, if you suddenly get a moment of inspiration.
I mean, in terms of sort of well-realised dramatic kablooey, the Executor springs to mind when it comes crashing into the second Death Star and that big burst of flame. Plus, you've got all the stuff with I can never remember. It's the A-wing, isn't it, that flies into the bridge. I mean, that's an amazingly well-realised effect considering the limited resources they had at the time. So.
Yeah. When you actually see it physically, you get that sort of flash frame of it actually coming through the window.
I don't quite know, because I mean, obviously they didn't have CG then, so I don't quite know how they did it, but it's impressive stuff.
Yeah, that is really impressive. And again, it's another one of those emotional and impressive deaths, because what you do is you suddenly go, oh, okay, right, fine, Vader is dead. Here we go. It's kind of like another indicator in the story that, that's it. It's all over now.
Tide has turned.
Tide has turned, yeah. So it's still pretty impressive. I mean, I was going to say another technically impressive death of a ship, just simply from a visceral level, I've got to say, is I guess I'm going to assume that you have, but have you seen the film Pitch Black?
Yes.
Yeah, a while ago.
At the very beginning, you have the Hunter Gratzner that basically smashes it through, gets kind of peppered by a rogue comet. And then it kind of does this whole air braking thing throughout, into the atmosphere of the planet that they'll spend the rest of the film on. And it's just such an impressive crash. It does what the Enterprise D kind of tried to do, if you know what I mean. Because there's this whole thing of it. It's burning up in the atmosphere. They put the air brakes on, but it's going too fast, and the air brakes will snap off, and everything's on fire. And then they sort of try and get some lift by jettisoning the cargo to try and keep the nose up a little bit longer. And one of the engines just can't hold the stress and breaks off. So then they go into a spin, and again they have to jettison more stuff. And the pilot's kind of holding in their minds they've got one more cargo canister to jettison. It's full of people. And it's like that whole thing of bloody hellfire, here we go. You know, this whole thing kind of falling apart, and then it hits the ground. And as it hits the ground and does the Enterprise D thing of skidding for about 3 miles.
Yep.
But the sides of the canisters start to fall off, so there's people actually holding onto the sort of substructure as like bits of rock are kind of racing past at 1,000 miles an hour. And just by the end of that, you just as an opener for a film, and as the death of a spaceship, you're sitting there going, Christ almighty, what the hell was that? Whoa.
It was a pretty good opener. I mean, again, Pitch Black's not a bad film.
No.
It's a bit of fun and all that. I've got 2 more I can think of.
Go on.
One might elicit some geek rage from you, but I'm basing this solely on a technical point. So again, it's technically impressive. It's the Prometheus.
Okay, that's...
It's just because, and let me explain my reasoning here. It's more from the interior. It's the way that bridge set was built.
Yeah.
When it takes off, you get a real sense that is an actual bridge taking off, an actual set. It moves, it feels very real. And then when it does that instant jump to light speed, and then it cuts to the long shot, and you kind of get the view from... It's almost like the explosion's happening in the background rather than in your face.
Yeah.
And then the sound hits a minute later. I thought that was a very well realised effect and moment and all that. And again, none of us, I think, would fault Prometheus for its production design.
No.
There's a lot else we'd fault it on, but not that.
Yes.
And I think that the Prometheus's death was a very well realised. I dare say that is probably the sort of effect he wanted from a Nostromo. It's just the technology wasn't there back in.
The Nostromo was not a technically great death.
It's not. It's there's a ship, then there's an explosion, then there's not a ship.
Yeah, and the explosion's not even a good explosion. It's just kind of
not.
like it's just some outtakes from 2001 splashed over the top of a black background. Well, on that term then, and this might elicit some geek rage too.
Okay.
I would say another really impressive effect, if not necessarily in an impressive film, is the destruction of the USS Vengeance in Star Trek Into Darkness. When it
as much as I would love to, at this point, jump down the microphone and throttle you have a fair point.
Yes.
I'll allow it.
Yes, the film itself is shit, and the whole... everything in it is completely unearned and has no emotional resonance. But the fact that they commit to the size of that ship, and then when it finally comes barreling in, it's like I don't know about you, Pete, but have you ever wondered what a Constitution class ship would look like smashing into a city? I mean, now imagine like the JJ ones where they sort of magnified by a factor of 6.
I mean, the thing with the Vengeance is it the size of a Galaxy class, or it's a bit bigger, isn't it?
It's twice the size of a Galaxy class.
Is it twice
it's like
the size?
2 kilometers or something.
Oh, okay, fine. But it's still, it's again, that's almost what the D crashing should have been like.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
it's not meant to be a pretty graceful sliding in sort of thing. It's meant to be, this thing is not meant to be on a planet, this is why it's not meant to be on a planet.
Yeah, it's not designed. It's not designed for any kind of atmosphere or gravity at all. So when it kind of barrels in, smashes into the floor, literally knocks over half a dozen buildings like Godzilla on a bender. It just like it goes completely bananas, and you sit there and you really do feel the scale of it when it comes passing overhead of some of the people on the floor watching this shit happen, and you think, wow, if they'd only put the care and attention that they put into this scene into the rest of the film, it might have been watchable.
Not without getting rid of Damon fucking Lindelof, it wouldn't have been.
Well, exactly. That's what
I thought of another great crash.
Go on, him.
Yeah.
Okay, the Milano crashing into the Darkcaster, and the look on Drax's face as they're shooting people as they're crashing.
Yeah,
it's just fantastic.
Doing that skid down a corridor, isn't it?
And he's got that huge smile on his face. Oh, everybody else is cacking themselves, understandably, and he's just laughing.
Oh, that's right. He is. He's just sitting there, just pissing himself, laughing, and as they go barreling down this massive wide corridor. That is fantastic.
And obviously, that's not just Quill's ship. That's kind of been his home, and it's got what little connection
it's his
he's got with
home.
Earth on board.
It's his lover.
Yeah, well, no, be careful. It's
it's his tube sock.
Yeah, it is.
But you know, the it's I suppose, slightly cheapened by the fact it gets so easily rebuilt at the end, presented to him as sort of prize. But
yeah, no, that's absolutely totally 100% valid. That one, I completely forgotten about that. It was that's an amazing little crash because they kind of go for the hole, and then it turns out the hole's not quite wide enough for the wings.
Yeah.
It's almost like in Indiana Jones when the plane flies into the tunnel and the wings are sheared off and he's just going along going, oh dear.
Yeah. Oh, no, don't come closer than that. But what else was I going to say? By the same measure, another ship that goes down and kind of crashes in a way that doesn't kill it, but certainly makes you kind of think, is, and I don't like the ship as a design.
What was it? A Leaf on the Wind?
It was a Leaf on the Wind.
Yes.
The Serenity. Again, it's not the prettiest ship, and it's not a ship I would ever call a firm favourite. But in terms of emotional connection, once it
comes
down,
back again to it's the people that you're invested in. It's that moment there, and to be fair, that bit when it's in that spin on the way down, that's some excellent effects. I mean, both practical and in terms of CG, which is really well done. Yeah, it's
superb.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a few others.
There's one more I'll say, which I think would be a good one to sign off with.
Yes.
The Battlestar Galactica at the end of a series.
Oh,
say what you will about the end of a series. And at some point we will say a lot about it. But that final shot when Kara says goodbye to Sam, when Adama flies out in a Viper for the last time, and he flies by the fleet, and it's all arranged in the traditional ragtag fleet format. And then the original score kind of lifts and plays as it flies off into the sun. That's a real,
Yeah. Da, 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 da. Yeah, and into the heart of the sun. I mean, that's a great. I think that's probably the only time of any of these ships where the destruction is both planned and necessary.
Yeah.
So So what we'll do, that's a really good one to end on. So what we'll do is that's our choices, our thoughts. What do you think? You out there, you listeners. So you got any other spaceships you think the deaths were either impressive, or emotional, or just plain shit? I mean, all options are open. But if you want to get your word in, because we might come back to this if there's enough alternative suggestions. So get on over to our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/SpaceDocJury, or join us on our continually feuding Twitter feed, where you can never quite work out which one of the three of us is running it.
It suffers from schizophrenia.
Guess who's tweeting?
Guess who's tweeting? Hashtag guess who's tweeting.
Clue,
SDJ.
if it's a picture of a ready room, it's me.
If it's a massive...
Or Thunderbirds 2086.
Yeah. I'm done with that now.
Oh, thank fuck.
You're only 17, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, so either talk to us on Twitter at SpaceDocJury or get on our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/SpaceDocJury, and let us know what's your favourite spaceship death, or what one made you feel emotionally wrecked. Which ones were most impressive, and which ones did you just think, oh, that's so cheap, I really hate you. I hate you, show creator, for doing that. And we didn't even mention the blue box that shouldn't be named.
Shh. We don't mention that.
That's always a bit cheap when they blow that up, because it's always quite quickly repaired, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I did have a bit of a aftertaste as far as the universe was concerned for a while. But yes. Anyway, moving on. So join us on the Facebook group, join us on Twitter, and join us next week for another full episode of Space Doc Jury. Until then, thanks for listening. Leave us a review and a comment on iTunes. That'd be great. And we'll speak to you all soon. Till then, tatty bye.
Cheery bye.
Ta-ra.
Space Dock Jury is a production of 3 Angry Beards for GeekPlanetOnline.com.